Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem on my Blitz game number 771. You know, I almost didn't upload this game because we both played badly at different times, but there were a few moments in this game that I thought were really instructive, so I bit the bullet. I went ahead and uploaded it, and well, you can make fun of my moves. Okay, so it starts off e4. He goes d6, which is a bit offbeat but not unheard of. I go d4. And now he goes e6, and well, that's pretty much outside the range of anything normal. I chose c4 here. It looks like f4 has been played before. I didn't really like f4 because of the idea of the queen coming out and giving a check here. Maybe that's not so terrible, but c4, there's nothing wrong with this. And he went a6, and now we're just completely out of the opening book. So as I was saying, when black plays a setup like this, because it's so so far back, all his pieces are on the second and third lines, the pieces don't come into contact, which means that he can play these moves very quickly. He doesn't have to calculate any tactics. So it's kind of a useful thing to do in Blitz sometimes. Also has the other benefit of getting your opponent out of his opening book. But the disadvantage, I mean, there's always disadvantages to come with the advantage. The disadvantage is that black is really much worse in these positions. Just has a tremendous space disadvantage. So you know, you won't see openings like this played in long time control games generally. You know, maybe at the club level, but not at the top levels. Okay, so I just continue with normal development, and I keep an edge. Let's see, all the way up to move 8. I think that's when it starts to get down into the range of normal opening advantage instead of, you know, white is pretty much winning. Let's see, he just continues with his rapid deployment. He's snapping all these moves out instantly. And I decided at this point to define the structure with d5. And yeah, the chess engine approves of this. I mean, this is seems like a reasonable setup to try and blunt the one piece that he's developed, the bishop on b7. Maybe you can make that ineffective, and continues with the idea of just grabbing more space. It does, as you push the pawns ahead, it does leave weaknesses behind. So, you know, the e4 and potentially the e3 square is not weak. e4 and d3 are weak squares. They're only guarded by pieces at the moment, so you do have to be a little bit careful. But black has not deployed any pieces, so there's no immediate problems. Let's say I go bishop e2, goes knight f6, finally getting a piece out, and I go b4. So this is the first inaccuracy, I would say. The chess engine says I can keep this big advantage by just normal developing moves like castles or bishop to e3. Yeah, both nice, solid, logical moves. So, you know, I was thinking ahead a little bit and trying to figure out what he was going to do, and I thought this was going to be his plan to put pressure on my weakened e4 square. So I just cut that off with b4. And it's not like that's a bad move. It's just that white's advantage diminishes a little bit. It gives black, I guess, a little bit of time to get his development going. He goes bishop e7. I go bishop g5. And bishop g5 is not a mistake here, although I should have been aware of the tactic. So so this is the first really instructive moment in the game, and I wanted to spend some time talking about it because whenever you put a bishop on g5, I'll go ahead and put it there, bishop on g5, you have to worry about the knight moving with the tempo on the bishop. And you know, I think that's one of the rules for why you should develop your knights before the bishops, is because the knight on f3 protects the bishop, so it helps defend the situation. But basically, the bishop is under defended. It's got two pieces attacking it and only one piece defending it if that knight moves. And so you have to always look around for tempo moves with the knight. And not any tempo move would work. If the knight were to go to g5 there, g4 rather, if the knight goes to g4, you can take the bishop off with tempo because it hits the queen or any other square. If the knight goes to any other square. But there's one square the knight can go to, and that's this knight takes d5. And not only does it grab a pawn threaten the bishop, but it also protects the bishop. So I call this a snapback. Bishop takes, knight takes, and black is just snagged a pawn, and black is a little bit better. So you know, once he played knight. Okay, so point number one is before playing bishop g5, I should have been aware of this tactic. It's not a problem unless you have a pawn or a piece even on the d5 square. So the combination of the pawn on d5 and the bishop on g5 is just a setup for this tactic. And black has a very easy game. He plays all these moves instantly. He's aware of all these tactics. And, you know, in the moment this configuration shows up on the board, you know, he just snaps out that move. Knight takes d5 instantly. And so, you know, you do tactics training to try and recognize these positions. You know, I think I miss this partly because I don't often play with this d5 move. And so I don't see this particular configuration that often. But I'm focusing on this because I want to make sure I remember this. So I'm kind of dwelling on this a bit. But, you know, this is one of those tactics that should definitely be in everyone's memory banks. But there's a second point here, which is a little bit more subtle, which is this tactic does not actually work. And so if you want to have a tactics quiz here for yourself, what is the best response for white in this position? Okay, pause the video if you want some time to think about it. I'm going to give the answer away now. White has an excellent response here in knight takes d5, because now you're losing the bishop over here. Bishop takes, knight takes, queen takes. But after queen takes, this c7 pawn has been left unguarded, and you have knight takes c7 check, and you can snag the rook in the corner. And now let's count the material. Well, let's see. The king has to move, right? You can't take the knights. The king has to move. Say it goes here to harass the knight, and you take. You can also come out this way. So let's count the material at this point. I have queen, 2 rooks, and 2 pieces. He has a queen, 1 rook, and 2 pieces. So even if the... Oh, yeah, he'll take the knight back. So I'm up the exchange. Yeah, this just won the exchange for me. And... let's see, maybe you could have thrown in queen takes g2, but basically things are otherwise even, and I'm just up the exchange. So this tactic, knight takes d5, in this particular case did not work. And so this is kind of the second point I wanted to make. You know, you train yourself with, you know, these tactics quizzes and tactics trainers to recognize these patterns. And when they show up on the board, you are tempted to slam them out instantly, right? You've been rewarding yourself for finding these tactics and playing them. And, you know, it can be hard to resist that temptation to play that tactic. But, well, each situation on the board has to be evaluated on its own merits, and it just doesn't work here. And from the other point of view, you know, I recognize this tactical pattern as soon as it appeared. And, you know, probably because of all that training, I gave it maybe a higher credence than it really deserved. I should have really viewed it more skeptically and said, is this tactic really working in this particular case? Now, one reason why it's a little bit hard to discover the best response here is that the taking with the pawn is really the more natural move in a way. You know, so if you're thinking about what you want, what kind of position you want after the exchanges, you know, you want these pawns here limiting his bishop. Whereas in this position, you know, you've got a weak pawn here that he can come after. So for reasons like that, you might want to take with the pawn rather than with the piece. But if you're thinking tactically, the way to evaluate a position like this, first of all, is you have to look at every sequence, you know, every possible capture. Should I take with this pawn? Should I take with that pawn? Should I take with the knight? Or should I do something else entirely? Is there some intermediate move? When you're thinking tactically, that's and also taking with a piece is often the better idea from a tactical point of view, because when you take with a piece, you know, it leaves lines open. It leaves the D file open for the queen, and it gets your piece into a more active spot. So anyway, that's my take on this particular position. Point number one is you have to do the tactics training to recognize these positions, but you have to overcome your tactics training in a sense and try and see what's really going on the board in each particular case. And I didn't do that. I just took back with the pawn. So he's a pawn up here, but I still have the better position, so I have compensation for the pawn. So it's interesting game from this point. He gets his piece back. And let's see, I played bishop f3, he castled, go rook c1, some normal developing moves here. I'm targeting this backwards c-pawn here. Goes knight d7, he's finally getting all of his pieces out. Let's see, I go knight e2, goes rook a c8, defending the pawn, I castle, and he goes b5. Yeah, b5 is a bit of a mistake, and that actually, the game, you know, he's got an edge here, and the chess engine is recommending continuation like f5 or even g6, maybe building up to f5, continuing to undermine this pawn chain. When he plays a move like b5, this kind of locks the pawn structure in place and leaves this as some kind of permanent weakness. So this move helps me out a little bit. So I go knight g3 to cover against tactics over here on the king side. Also looking at the f5 square. He goes knight to b6. He's looking at the erase those. He's looking at the c5 square, for c4 square for his knight. Let's see. So I went rook c3 here, and he went c6. So trying to undermine the pawn chain in this position. But after this exchange here, let's see. He gives the pawn back. Let's see. His best reply here is bishop takes c6, and I can still grab this pawn, but he can go knight c4, harassing my queen, and the queen has to go back. So we get to a position that is materially even. So, you know, he has given up his advantage here, but that was a better way to play than the way he played it. He took with the rook, maybe trying to hold on. I think he kind of noticed at the last minute that he was giving away a pawn. So, you know, his play all up until this point has been too fast. You know, he snapped that tactic off too fast. I didn't punish it, but he also continued to play very fast at a time when he was well past, you know, positions that he knew well, and he should have been thinking a little more. Anyway, I take. He takes with the bishop. I take the pawn, and we are even here, and my pieces are a bit more active, I think. Let's see, rook c8 appears to be a mistake. Queen back to f6 and just trading is the way to go according to the chess engine, and this position is about even. And rook to d1, and maybe still some slight edge. And my bishop isn't the greatest piece in the world, but my knight's looking pretty good, and his pawns are weak here. I have ideas of bringing in the rook. So I like white in this position. But let's see. He went rook to c8, just defending his bishop. And now I get by knight into this good square, the knight on f5. And yeah, this is actually got some really dangerous threats here. The knight to e7 check. So I guess that was the reason why rook to c8 was not the most accurate response here. He played king to h8. And for some reason, I didn't follow through with this knight e7 threat. I mean, it was a threat to fork three pieces, and he could only move one of them off, but I still have this fork here. And I think I was worried about the move knight to c4, chasing my queen away, and my knight is kind of loose on e7. But in fact, that's not a problem. After knight e7, knight c4, I have this move queen to c5. And his rook is just hanging there, so there's not like there's any discovery he can make with the bishop, as long as it doesn't move with check, that is. And there's no checks for that bishop. So, yeah, he's just going to lose some material here. Rook e8 and knight takes c6. So, really, I played up to this point and reasonably well, and you know, I had spotted this tactic, and then I just at the last moment didn't play it. So, yeah, that's too bad. That was my chance to win the game. And so I have other chances to win the game, too. So we're getting to other instructive moments. Anyway, yeah, just a miscalculation on my part. So I dropped the knight back to e3, and we're in the range of about even. So let's go on. He goes with this queen f6 line now. I guess he realized he didn't want his rook tied up forever. Let's see, I bring my rook out, put some pressure on the bishop. He goes king to g7, holding onto his pawns over here. I go knight f5 check. The chess engine liked bishop g4 a little better. Bishop g4 is an interesting idea, maybe trying to make it awkward to keep defending the bishop. But he can defend like this with bishop to d7, and we get into this kind of situation. Everything comes off, and let's see at the end. Do I have? Oh, he has knight takes c8 and f3. Yeah, this is a position where there's some kind of slight edge for white, but a pretty even position. So anyway, maybe it's better. Practically, it's still better to keep the material on with a move like knight f5. Okay, so let's go forward some moves. This was a long game, and we're just kind of doing some simple maneuvering here and getting into this endgame, which was played okay, no big mistakes pointed out by the chess engine. He got his knight active, I got my knight active, and we're both going after the pawns on the queen side. And the next big mistake is right here. I played the move knight a6, and that actually does not work, and I should lose after that. The move I had to play right here is pawn to b6. And I thought about this move for a little bit. I mean, I'm threatening to push the pawn forward and harass the either win the bishop or queen. So it seems to win a piece. But well, he can just take this pawn, and I think what I missed was this. I can take his pawn, leaving my knight hanging. I didn't like the idea of leaving my knight hanging, but I'm attacking his knight at the same time, and we would get into this position, which is pretty much completely even. So that's probably the best that can happen at this point. Yeah, at that point the material is so small that the drawing chances are pretty high. Anyway, I didn't quite figure that out correctly, and I played the move knight to a6. And he has a win just by pushing the pawn, a very simple win. And I was a little bit worried about that, but I also didn't calculate that out correctly. Anyway, he took my knight, but just to show this, if he pushes the pawn, I can bring my knight back to c5, but it just keeps running. Get all the way to b3. Let's see, he has this check. I think maybe that's what I didn't see. This is how he can kind of turn this into a win. Let's see, if I move my king, then he's going to take my knight. But if I take his knight, then he throws in bishop to e6, and I cannot get my knight back in time to a square that he's covering this square, and so I can't put my knight anywhere that stops him from queening that pawn. So that pawn goes through. So that did require a bit of calculation, but a4 is a pretty natural move there. I mean, in a blitz game, I would probably go for that instantly. Anyway, he went with bishop takes a6, and we're back in the range of... actually, I think I'm a little better now with the extra pawn over here on the king side and bishop versus a knight. Okay, well, it's the same number of pawns, but he has maybe a weakness over here. Let's go on some more moves, because I did have a chance to win this. Oh, okay, that's what it was. King c6 keeps the game about even. When he came forward with king c5, he's letting this pawn slip away, and this gives me winning chances again. He pushes on to b3. I can get my king in front of his pawn, and he's sort of giving up on my pawn, or at least he's not stopping it with the king. So I should have pushed on here. This would have been a win for me, because his knight is back here stopping my pawn from queening, and I'll win at least a piece here. And in the meantime, my king is sitting here blockading his pawn. So instead of that, where were we? Oh, we were here on this a7 move. Yeah. Instead of pushing the pawn, I played king to b2, and that lets him move his knight with check. And so my pawn is a little bit too far away. Let's see, king b1, And let's see, he can draw with knight to c3 check. King b2, knight a4 check. He can't take my bishop because the pawn queens, but he can achieve a draw. So that was why my immediate king b2 was a mistake. It let him get this drawing idea with the knight checks. Let's see, he went king a3, and now I'm back to a winning position here, I think. Let's see, I push the pawn forward, he brings his knight back. So, you know, I've got his knight kind of tied up. I snag a pawn over here on the queen side, and king b2. Yeah, so my fastest win here was bishop back to d5. Once again, he can't really take the bishop because I will queen, and I'm threatening just to push that pawn forward. He comes with king a6. Yeah, I just queen, and he has to give up a piece. So that was the simplest win. King b2 is still winning. I think I was playing a little too fast at this part and just kind of going on autopilot. But it's still winning, but it's kind of a slower win. And we will get to a key point in a few moves, and it's right here. Right here. Yeah, so I kind of improved things quite a bit, and that's what you want to do. If you've got an advantage in the endgame, I came out of this with an extra pawn, and we've got a knight, bishop versus a knight, and often the bishop is the better piece in an endgame, but because the pawns are on one side of the board, the knight is a very good defender in these cases. It's got some good squares it can take up, and I was just in too much of a rush. So the way to win an endgame like this is to proceed with caution. Every pawn trade in this position increases black's chances of drawing, because as happened in the game, if you just trade off these two pawns against these two, he can sacrifice his knight for the last pawn, and it's a simple draw. So you need to keep the remaining pawns on the board and not push until you are sure that you can get a winning edge here. And so there are different ideas on how you proceed and how you improve. If you can't push pawns, what else can you do? You can maneuver your pieces around, try and create a Zugzwang situation, or as in this case, you can try and penetrate with your king. And that's often a really powerful idea in these endgames. And king to g6 just wins because he can't defend his pawns. His knight is a little bit far away, and so is his king. The king is actually cut off by my bishop. So I'd gotten to this ideal configuration where I'd gotten my pawns as far forward as possible without trading them off, and I had gotten his knight and his king a little bit away from the action over here, and I just didn't take advantage of it. I just was moving too fast and went g5. And so now it really is a draw. Oh, actually, there was still one more chance. Let's see, he took with h, and I could have took with the h pawn. I could have actually pushed the h pawn and also still won. But after the trades, this is just a draw. So in any case, let's see. Let's not. I just wanted to point out. Let's see. I played king f5, and he just took the pawn immediately. But also pushing the pawn forward doesn't help, because after a few moves, his king can just sit there, and the furthest forward I can ever get that pawn is directly in front of it, and then his knight can take it once again. So there's really just no hope. So after he took the pawn, the game ended in a draw. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I thought there were a couple of instructive moments, particularly that tactic at the beginning, that snapback tactic, and the fact that it didn't work, and then at the end here, how you play the endgame, I think is useful knowledge to have, going slow in the endgame. Okay, so I will see you guys later. Bye.